When the day comes to its close and the shadows of the evening settle in, the heart begins to feel the weight of all that has passed, and the hours of the morning may have been filled with energy and determination. But by the time night arrives, the soul often carries scars and stains from the struggle's face. There are words spoken in haste that leave regret, thoughts entertained that trouble the conscience, and moments of weakness that expose how fragile we are. The burdens of the day are many, and though we try to push them aside, they cling to us. We carry the frustrations of conversations that did not go well, the anxiety of tasks left unfinished, and the sorrow of temptations that overtook us. Each worry becomes like a stone, each regret like a chain, and by the time evening comes, the body is tired, the mind restless, and the spirit heavy. This is why the Lord calls us to bring everything before Him in prayer before the day ends. It is dangerous to carry the weight of sin, fear, or sorrow into the night, because the enemy uses the darkness to magnify what burdens us. But in the presence of God, and no chain can remain, no fear can linger, and no sorrow can dominate. Laying down the burdens of the day means choosing to empty the heart before Him, confessing the failures, surrendering the struggles, and releasing the anxieties. It is to come honestly and say, Lord, I could not handle everything today. I fell short. I worried too much. I doubted too often. But I give it all to You. This act of surrender is not weakness, but strength, because only when we acknowledge our insufficiency can His sufficiency be revealed. As we kneel in prayer, the burdens that felt immovable begin to lift. The weight of guilt loses its power when placed under the blood of Christ. The tight grip of fear is broken when the Spirit remembers that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. The chains of anxiety loosen when we cast our cares upon Him, for He cares for us. Night is meant to be a time of rest, but rest cannot come when the soul is imprisoned by its own troubles. True rest comes only when we lay down our burdens at the feet of the Lord, trusting that He alone can carry what we cannot. Laying down the burdens of the day is not simply an act of letting go, but an act of faith. It is faith that believes tomorrow is already in God's hands. It is faith that accepts forgiveness for today's failures. It is faith that trusts that even the things left undone, even the mistakes made, and even the wounds carried will all be used by the Lord for a greater purpose. When the believer lays down in peace, after laying down the burdens, it is not because life has become suddenly perfect, but because the soul knows that everything is now resting with the one who is perfect. And so, night after night, prayer becomes the holy exchange where weakness is traded for strength, worry for peace, and sorrow for hope. It is the sacred rhythm of a child of God to close the day not in fear or regret, but in surrender at the throne of grace. There comes a moment at the close of each day when the human body grows wearied and the mind feels drained. The hours of labor, the endless demands, the unspoken pressures all press heavily upon us, leaving little energy even to think clearly. It is in these moments that the soul longs for renewal, for a fresh breath of life, that no amount of sleep alone can provide. Renewal of strength is more than just physical rest. It is a deep restoration that only God Himself can bring. The Scriptures remind us that those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. And this promise is not confined to the dawn of a new morning, but extends to the quiet hours of the night when the soul seeks replenishment. Strength is not merely measured by how much the body can endure, but how steadfast the heart remains when tested. Throughout the day, we encounter challenges that drain our inner strength, conflicts at home, difficulties in work, temptations that gnaw at our faith, and disappointments that crush our spirit. If left unresolved, these burdens strip away our courage and leave us feeling powerless. Yet God, in His infinite mercy, invites us to come before Him at the close of the day, so that He may pour His strength into our weakness. Renewal happens when the soul acknowledges its emptiness and opens itself to receive the fullness of divine grace. To be renewed is to be lifted beyond the limits of human endurance. It is to feel the Spirit of God breathing fresh life into tired bones, reviving a weary heart, and then igniting once again the flame of faith that struggles to burn amidst the winds of trouble. Renewal is not instant escape from hardship, but it is the assurance that the one who holds tomorrow is already strengthening you tonight. In the secret place of prayer, when the world has grown silent, God whispers His promises into the heart of the believer, and those promises become like oil that heals and strengthens. This renewal of strength does not only prepare us for the next day, but reshapes how we see our present struggles. When the Lord renews, we no longer look at challenges as obstacles meant to destroy us, but as opportunities through which His power is revealed. The burden that once seemed unbearable becomes lighter. Not because it has disappeared, but because God Himself carries it with us. The fears that once stole our sleep lose their grip, for the soul finds refuge under the wings of the Almighty. Renewal changes despair into hope, weakness into courage, and heaviness into peace. Each night becomes a sacred meeting with the Lord, where the weary exchange their exhaustion for the strength that flows from His presence. It is a strength that no medicine can offer, no wealth can purchase, and no human words can fully describe. It is strength that endures through trials, that stands firm in storms, and that walks with confidence even in the valley of shadows. As the day fades and the night settles, the believer who turns to God in surrender discovers that divine strength is not limited by time or circumstance. The same God who renews the eagle's wings renews the heart of His child, and in His presence the soul learns to rise again, prepared to face whatever awaits with a spirit that has been made new when the night falls and silence begins to cover the earth. There is often a stirring within the soul that refuses to be still. The mind recalls every word spoken, every choice made, every fear that lingered throughout the day, and it begins to replay them like an endless stream. For many, the body may lie down, but the heart and mind remain restless. This is why calmness of spirit is not simply a luxury, but a necessity for every believer who desires to rest in the presence of God. The calmness that comes from Him is unlike the shallow comfort the world tries to offer. It is not dependent on favorable circumstances, nor is it the absence of problems. Rather, it is a deep, unshakable peace that flows from trusting the Lord, who holds all things in His hands. A calm spirit is not achieved by ignoring the difficulties of life or pretending they do not exist. It comes from bringing those difficulties into the presence of God, allowing His peace to rule. The heart, the words of Christ remind us, let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. For He gives peace not as the world gives, but as only the Son of God can give. This peace settles the restless thoughts. It silences the inner storm, and it brings harmony where there was once turmoil. When the believer learns to cast every care upon the Lord, the spirit is freed from the heavy chains of worry and anxiety. The storms may continue outside, but within the heart, there is a calmness that cannot be shaken. To walk in calmness of spirit is to live in the assurance that God is present in every detail of life. It means knowing that nothing has escaped His knowledge, nothing has surprised Him, and nothing can overpower Him. The restless spirit is often born out of fear of the unknown. Yet, when one trusts that the Almighty has already written tomorrow, the fear begins to dissolve. The calm spirit rests not because all is understood, but because it knows the one who understands all. In this stillness, the soul learns to listen, to hear the gentle whisper of God's voice above the noise of the world. Nighttime prayer becomes the gateway to this calmness. As words of surrender rise before the throne of grace, the spirit finds release from its burdens. The weight of the day that once pressed so heavily begins to fade in the presence of divine peace. The believer discovers that calmness of spirit is not an achievement of human effort, but a gift received when the heart yields to God. It is like a river that flows steadily within, undisturbed by the chaos around it. A river whose source is the eternal faithfulness of God. When this calmness fills the soul, it guards both the mind and the heart, allowing rest to settle in and hope to rise again. In this place of holy stillness, the believer is reminded that the Lord is the keeper of peace, and in Him alone does the spirit find its true calm. As the night draws near and the world begins to quiet down, the soul is invited into a sacred moment of surrender. The hours of the day may have been filled with noise, with countless responsibilities and endless concerns, yet when evening comes, there is an opportunity to place all of these into the hands of God. Surrender in night prayer is not a sign of defeat, but an act of faith, for it acknowledges that the human heart cannot carry alone what only the Creator was meant to bear. It is the posture of one who comes before the Lord and says, "Here I am, with my successes and my failures, my joys and my sorrows, my fears and my hopes. Take it all, Lord, for I am yours." The soul that surrenders at night understands that tomorrow is uncertain, and the worries of the day are often too heavy to take into sleep. Rest is impossible without release, and release is impossible without surrender. In prayer, we bow our hearts before God and allow Him to take full control, trusting that His will is perfect and his wisdom unsearchable. This is not simply speaking words, but entering into a deep trust that even when our minds cannot comprehend what lies ahead, his hand is guiding every step. Night prayer becomes the holy exchange where we hand over our weakness and receive his strength, where we give up our restlessness and find his peace. There is a mystery in surrender that transforms the soul. When we let go of our grip on control, we discover the gentle grip of God holding us more firmly than we ever could hold ourselves. When we release our worries, we begin to sense his assurance whispering in the silence. To surrender in prayer is to lay our head on the chest of the Almighty, confident that even as we sleep, he neither slumbers nor sleeps. The problems that appear so overwhelming in the daylight shrink in the presence of his sovereignty when laid before him at night. In this surrender, forgiveness is found, healing begins, and burdens are lifted. The heart no longer strives to figure out what tomorrow will hold, for it has learned to rest in the knowledge that God has already gone before us. Surrender is the gateway to true peace, for peace cannot dwell in a heart still clinging to control. The night prayer becomes more than a routine. It becomes the sanctuary of the weary soul, a place where the human spirit bows low and encounters the majesty of God's love and care. In that sacred moment, the believer rests not only from the labors of the day, but also from the endless striving of the heart, learning to sleep in the comfort of divine arms, confident that all is safely entrusted to the one who reigns forever.